Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special Travel Skills Monday Night Travel. As you might have guessed, I'm not Gabe. I'm Ben Green, and I have the tremendous pleasure of hosting tonight's talk. And now I would like to introduce one of my favorite travelers and someone many of you know and love, Gabe Gunnink. Hi, Gabe. Welcome to
Hello,
Monday Night
Ben.
Travel.
I'm sure you say that to all the travelers that you come across, that they're your favorite. But we were on a team last week in this very room together. So I do think that we have a strong kinship. So thank you for that lovely introduction. I appreciate it. And you're going to pop off behind the scenes to post those chats and those resource links in the chat widget and to do the Q&A. So thank you very much, Ben. And hello, Monday Night Travelers. It is so good to be back with all of you for a second week in a row and to really have the show all to myself this time, to have you all to myself. I hope that you came eager to learn. So often when we think about our travel year, we kind of divide it up into three major seasons in our head. Usually, winter and spring are our times of kind of travel dreaming and starting to plan our trips for the year. We're thinking a little bit more about travel skills and nuts and bolts as we prepare. Usually in the summer, we have kind of our on the road period where, of course, we encourage plenty of shoulder season travel, but peak months are still peak months. So the most travelers are on the road in the middle of the year. And then in the fall, we like to reflect on why it is that we travel. So this spring, we decided that we wanted to have a little travel skills series. So back in February, Ben chatted with you about travel skills related to lodging. Last month, Lisa Friend did a blockbuster show on packing that I can only hope to live up to a tenth of. Um, and today we are going to kind of round that out in April with a presentation on phones and technology, traveling with a smartphone. But I do want to remind you, if you are planning travel or might be soon or just enjoy learning about travel skills, Ben and Lisa's shows are on our Travel Talks YouTube channel, and you can find them linked on the Monday Night Travel homepage. So without further ado, we are going to get started. I think it was a few weeks ago when we did a show commemorating the 40th edition of our Travel Skills Handbook, Europe Through the Back Door. So Rick also did a show. It was kind of a retrospective on how some travel skills and some of his favorite places have changed. But I believe it was that show that Lisa Friend asked him what has most changed for the better and for the worst in travel over the past few decades. And I believe Rick said that the thing that had changed the most for the better was technology and access to phones. And the thing that had changed most for the worst was technology and access to phones. So it is an important topic. It is something that is going to impact every day of your life on the road. And the way that you approach it can either greatly enhance or greatly detract from your trip. So we want to learn to use our smartphones as a tool. Before we dive in, I have one last disclaimer. It's the same disclaimer that I gave last fall when I did a presentation on the Faroe Islands, which is that I was not a Faroe Islands expert that was born there and had spent decades as a local guide. And I'm not a technology expert. My degrees are in Spanish, literature, and writing. So I am a humanities person. I am a traveler like you. And like you, I have had to learn how to use my phone effectively while traveling. And I've done a lot of research, and I'm excited to share that with all of you now. So let's get started. I am going to bring up my presentation here. All right, so smart travel with a smartphone. So again, it's not just travel with a smartphone, but it's how do we travel intelligently with a smartphone and use it to our advantage. I should say now one more thing. If you have your phone, grab it. I'm going to be going through some settings that you can set up. So it would be helpful to have your phone, open up your app store. I'm going to be going through some helpful apps so you can maybe download those on the spot if they are interesting to you. I should also say, you may have already noticed, I have an iPhone, so I'm going to be a little bit more iPhone focused. The apps are going to function on any type of smartphone. And for some of the settings, I've also included Android as much as possible. So off we go. All right, we are going to begin with a brief philosophy of phones, just nice light philosophy. We're going to learn the lingo. I'm assuming no prior knowledge. I guess I'm assuming that you know what a phone is. I am assuming that. But some of the terms I'm sure some of you are familiar with and others aren't. So I am going to be going over some lingo. We are going to talk about what kind of techie traveler are you? What approach do you want to take to using your device abroad? We're going to talk about packing your phone. So Lisa worked with you on packing your bags, but it's equally important to pack your phone intelligently. And finally, we're going to talk about how to use your phone on the ground in Europe. So the goal is to do most of this before you even go so that you don't have to worry about it. But there are a few things that you just naturally have to be doing and thinking about while you're on the ground. So first, a brief philosophy of phones. So in the beginning, there was travel. There was not phones. And so for travel, we needed things like maps to get around. We needed things like a compass, maybe. In fact, until recently, we actually sold a travel compass still. You needed your train tickets for the Deutsche Bahn train. You needed your printed plane ticket. Maybe you didn't carry a phone in your bag, but you were going to need to use one, maybe in one of those now old-fashioned red telephone booths. Maybe you were going to have to bring a little address book with your important numbers scribbled down. Maybe you wanted some entertainment, some music to listen to. You had to bring that device. Probably weren't going to bring a big flashlight, but some people would carry small flashlights in case they needed to navigate around at night. And of course, a calculator, perhaps, maybe not this big of one, but a small one, calculating tip and whatnot. And lastly, the camera. Of course, big cameras around your neck. Up until, I still have my old camera that I used to travel with. I just discovered it while I was going through my technology drawer this morning. So we had all of these tools. And it is incredible to me that really all of these tools have now been replaced by this one smartphone. All of those capabilities live inside here: a camera, a flashlight, your address book. It is incredible to me how much is crammed in there. But it's important to note that this is not just a tool. It's not just a Swiss Army knife of all of those great travel things. It's much more. It is Facebook and social media. It's your work email lives on there. It's videos of kittens befriending soldiers on YouTube. It's memes. It's texting. It's your daily New York Times crossword puzzle. It's your news app. It's great gifs of Rick having fun in Europe. And eventually, oh no, you've spent your whole trip toggling around on your phone for entertainment, distracting yourself from the reason that you're really there. So it's important to realize that our phones, they can be tools and they can be what is sometimes great entertainment. But when you're supposed to be focused on this intense just experience saturated with travel thrills, it can distract from them. So I always ask myself when I'm traveling, am I using my phone for its tools, for the utilities that it provides me? Or am I using it for entertainment at a time that I should be entertaining myself with things that I can't get back home? Am I using it for connection? We're going to talk later about ways that you can message with people in Europe. You can use Google Translate to have conversations that weren't possible even 5 years ago. Or am I using it as distraction? Am I standing on the bus and rather than looking around me, am I just, using it to text my friend? And again, with that, am I using it to be present, or is my phone causing me to be mentally absent from what's happening around me? So those are kind of the guiding things that you want to be thinking about with how you're using your smartphone while you're in Europe. Now, as I said, we're going to start out by going to Travel with a Smartphone University. and we are going to learn some basic terms and lingo. So we're going to start with some easy ones. We have Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi allows wireless internet connection within a set area. Now I'm going to debunk two things right now. The first, it's nitpicking, but Wi-Fi doesn't mean internet. Wi-Fi is one way to access the internet. The internet is this vast, beautiful, terrible, terrifying, incredible wonderland. And Wi-Fi is one of the portals that you can go through to access that. Wi-Fi also doesn't actually stand for anything. I did a lot of research trying to drill down into, is it an acronym? Is it like wireless something? It is just a term come up with by marketers. So it doesn't actually stand for anything, just if you've been wondering like I have. Those of you who have Wi-Fi at home are probably familiar with a router. That is kind of the source of where the internet is being pulsed out from. While you're in Europe and while you're in the US, common places to find Wi-Fi are cafes. Of course, your hotels will have Wi-Fi. Museums and public places, transportation hubs. And in Europe, there's even a lot of plazas that have Wi-Fi. And then there are public and private networks for Wi-Fi. So sometimes you have to add in a password in order to access it. And sometimes you can just join it willy-nilly free of charge. Well, even with the password, it's typically free of charge, but public and private. So when I think of getting on the internet, I almost think of Wi-Fi as like a campfire. Think that to use your phone, you have to heat it up, and that these Wi-Fi routers are little campfires that you can warm your phone so that you can send those messages, right? It's strong in a certain area, but the heat doesn't go very far. So you have to be relatively close to the router. So Wi-Fi is typically used within buildings rather than on a larger scale. Meanwhile, we have cellular data. So cellular data, oftentimes we hear Wi-Fi and data as kind of these two opposites. Cellular data is another way to access the internet through a cellular network or a mobile network. So this is also, people use cellular data and mobile data interchangeably. So it's data passed between a device and the internet via a mobile network. And these networks belong to mobile providers. They belong to T-Mobile and Verizon and AT&T, and it's all these cables and towers and cells that create this vast network that allows you to send your memes and to quick check things on Wikipedia whenever you want to. And so I think of this less as like a fire and more like having your phone just zapped by a laser from afar. Certainly there are places that it can't reach. If you're in a really secluded area, down in a cave, that laser's not going to be able to reach you. But rather than having to get fairly close, at least within a few rooms of that router, you can get cellular data is something that is on the scale of entire cities. Data roaming is something that a lot of us have probably heard about in regards to travel. Data roaming is just accessing a cellular network using cellular data outside of your home network. So if I travel to France, T-Mobile doesn't own that network anymore. So I can still use those towers to get my mobile data, but I am now roaming. I'm outside of my usual area. So that's why we have things like international plans and SIM cards to give us access to those different networks. Now, you may have heard some data roaming horror stories, people who didn't realize that they had their cellular data switched on in their pocket. And so they walked around Europe for weeks, slowly racking up charges and came back to these exorbitant bills. There are individual instances of that happening. Now, most companies have kind of safeguards to prevent those exorbitant bills from happening. But it is something that we want to be cognizant of, that we can't just necessarily use our phone as we normally would back home when we're abroad and we're accessing these different networks. So in terms of, if you're wondering, hey, if I'm abroad and I have both options, should I use Wi-Fi or cellular? Typically, Wi-Fi, if you have a good connection, if you're near the router, that's going to be a little bit faster. Again, the heat of that fire is going to be a little bit more immediate than the time it takes for that laser to hit you. I hope that this metaphor is working for everybody. Again, Wi-Fi, though, is for small areas, and cellular networks cover large areas. When you're using Wi-Fi, you can use as much data as you can get from that Wi-Fi. Data limits are applied to cellular data. So if you're accessing the cellular network for data, then it's based on the plan that you have with your provider. So typically, if I have the option to use Wi-Fi, I almost always do, unless for some reason the signal is really weak and the speeds are slow. But typically, Wi-Fi is king. Use that whenever you can, and then switch to cellular when needed. Now, some of you may have heard of a hotspot. Technically, a hotspot is just, and again, we're getting back to my heat analogy. It worked out nicely. So typically, a hotspot is just any location where people can access the internet via a wireless local area network. This is something I learned while I was preparing for this presentation, was that acronym. I'd seen WLAN so many times when I was finding Wi-Fi networks and never knew what it meant. So it is a wireless local area network. And so really a hotspot is just anywhere you can kind of access the internet. Most people, when they say hotspot, what they mean is tethering, which means that they can get a connection to the cellular network on their phone, and their phone has a capability that lets it serve as a source of internet for other devices. So I do this sometimes if a cafe doesn't have a Wi-Fi network. I get wireless connection on my phone. I set it as a hotspot, and then I can look in my Wi-Fi networks on my laptop, and I see my phone pop up as a source of Wi-Fi for me. So you can provide it for your laptop, for friends' phones. So that is what a hotspot is. Another one that always seemed baffling to me and is quite simple is 2G, 3G, 4G, LTE, 5G, the next generation. G literally just means generation. So these are evolving generations of mobile communication networks. So all of that infrastructure, the cables and the towers and all the individual cells that are owned by the companies that I don't understand at all, it's helpful to know that it's just different standards, and with each successive generation having a higher standard for the capabilities, for sending, not just text messages, but media messages with photos and GIFs. And generally, they get faster. LTE is long-term evolution and is really kind of packaged in with 4G. So again, just different speeds. Typically, 5G is going to be faster than 2G for the most part. SMS might be another that you hear. This is especially used in Europe. We don't use it much here, but it's not uncommon in Europe to see this written in cell phone plans or to even hear people say SMS. It stands for short message service, and people use it interchangeably with just a text message. If you ever see MMS, that is a multimedia messaging service. So that's if you send a text also with a photo or with a video, multimedia. But SMS is just text messaging. WhatsApp, we're going to get to this later when we talk about different travel apps that I love. But it's an app used for messaging. You can also use it for voice and video calls. And it's a sneaky way that you can get around your using your cellular data. It allows you to use Wi-Fi to skirt any international rates. It's especially great for if you want to make calls. You can get around those international rates by calling on Wi-Fi instead. It's not as common here in the US, but it is all over Europe and the rest of the world. I remember the first time that my Spanish mama told me, Gabriel, mándame un WhatsApp. I was like, send me a WhatsApp? What is a WhatsApp? It took me so long to realize that she was saying in her Spanish accent, WhatsApp. So she, even my 60-some-year-old Spanish mama, who I love dearly, is on WhatsApp all the time. So people will even say, instead of send me a text, they might say, send me a WhatsApp. And lastly, SIM cards. So we'll discuss these more later, but a SIM card is a tiny chip storing a phone's account information. And SIM simply stands for subscriber identity module. So it saves things like the phone number. It saves kind of codes that basically allow the various cell phone companies, mobile companies, and networks to identify you, to assure that you have access to the network, and so that they can bill you for your use of the network. So SIM cards are often country specific. So we'll talk later about how you could use your same phone, pull out your SIM card, and put in a SIM card for Belgium or France or Switzerland. And that would allow you then to access those local networks as if your phone just originated there in that country. Now, SIM cards have gotten smaller and smaller over time. They started back in the 90s, the size of credit cards, and they went to micro SIM cards and then nano SIM cards. And now the nano ones are like smaller than your pinky fingernail. And in fact, they've just now started the iPhone 14. They don't even have removable SIM cards. They have eSIMs, which are embedded SIM cards. And we will get to those later. But for now, I want to do a quick practice. So ask yourself, would I understand this sentence? So if somebody said, hey, I get 5G here, so if you can't connect your laptop to the Wi-Fi, you can use my hotspot. So this person is just saying, hey, I am accessing great cellular data. I'm on 5G, the highest generation you can get. If you can't connect your laptop to the Wi-Fi here in this cafe, if for any reason the password isn't working for you or you're not close enough to the router to get strong signal, I can turn my phone into a hotspot, a source of internet that you can connect to. The museum is going to send an SMS passcode, but I have to switch out my SIM card to get it. So the museum is going to send an SMS passcode. So maybe I've made a reservation and they are going to send that passcode by SMS is text message. But before I get those text messages, maybe I'm going to use a SIM card for my trip. So I'm going to have to go to the mobile phone shop, get the card out of my phone, put the new card in. Now I can accept those local messages. Again, not everybody's going to use a SIM card. This is just one scenario. I have a Swiss SIM card, so I can use cellular data in Zurich, but I have to be careful with data roaming on the trains near the German border. So again, this person got a SIM card so that they can access the cellular network in Switzerland, but a lot of these SIM cards are country specific. So you have to be careful around borders that you don't get charged for that roaming data and start using towers that belong to a different network that are going to charge you a higher rate. And lastly, send me a WhatsApp if the mobile shop says they sell eSIMs. So again, send me a WhatsApp. That just means a message within the app that is called WhatsApp, which we will discuss later. And eSIMs are those tiny embedded SIM cards that we're also going to get to. So hopefully you feel like that brush up of terms was helpful and you passed with flying colors. All right, now that we have worked our way through the terms, we're going to move on to the question, what kind of tech traveler are you? So there are a few different kind of big picture philosophical approaches that you can take to using technology in Europe. So I have 4 different kind of tech traveler identities here, and you can see which one you might resonate with. An international pass holder. This is going to be somebody that gets an international pass. This one is the most set it and forget it. You can get the pass in advance and then travel and just kind of forget about anything to do with your plan. A Wi-Fi hopper. This is for somebody that's maybe going to be stingy and try not to use the cellular network too much, which they have to pay for, and use free Wi-Fi instead. The technolocal. This might be somebody that wants to use those local SIM cards to access the local networks and basically have their phone act as if it's lived in France its whole life. And the clean slaters. There are some people that just say, I don't want to have my phone in Europe at all. I want to get a completely new one. So we're going to dig into each of these briefly. So an international pass holder. Again, if you have a mobile phone, you should have a mobile phone provider like T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T. Those are kind of the big three. And they all give different international pass options that would allow you to use your phone in Europe like you do in the US, just with a few small tweaks and some different fees. So let's look at Verizon first. So Verizon, you have an option that is a travel pass. It's $10 per day per line while you're traveling. You get unlimited talk, text, and data. And you only pay for the days that you use, and they define a day as a 24-hour period. So once you activate it, you have 24 hours to use as much talk, text, and data as you want for $10. They also have an international monthly plan that is $100 per month per line. You still get unlimited texting, unlimited data, and searching the internet, and you get 250 minutes of talk, which hopefully you don't need too much more than that if you're busy having fun in Europe. If you do the math, there's about 10 travel passes that would go into a monthly plan. So if you're going to use more than 10 days in a month, you should go with the monthly plan. If you're going to use less than 10 days, you should just do a series of daily travel passes, because if it's less than 10, it won't add up to 100. I'm going to show you later how, if you wanted to, back when I was just out of college, I was being stingy, I had Verizon, I did the $10 travel pass, and I only used it in desperate needs, desperate situations where I was lost, and I tried to see how few days I could incur. So we're going to get to that strategy a little bit later. Another option, AT&T. They have an international day pass, similar to Verizon's travel pass. Again, $10 per day per line, but that's actually just the first line. Any additional lines on the account are $5 a day. It's unlimited talk, text, and data. You only pay for the days that you use. Again, they have a max charge of 10 days. So per line, per bill. So if you were traveling for a month and you used 30 days, you'd only hit that 100 mark. So it sounds kind of like they just have a simpler version of Verizon. I will say it says $10 per line per bill. Everybody's bill starts on a different day of the month. So if you have AT&T, I would contact them and ask, hey, what if I'm traveling the last 10 days of one bill cycle and the first 10 days of the other? Will I get charged for all 20 days because it bridges a bill cycle? That I do not know. You would have to ask. And lastly, T-Mobile, just travel. I kind of joke, I have T-Mobile. We are not sponsored by T-Mobile, but T-Mobile has a great plan for people that travel internationally often, because they provide unlimited text and data abroad on most of their popular plans. They have some plans that are just bare essentials that might not include this, but most of their popular plans, they're Magenta, Magenta Plus, whatnot. I don't know all the names, but most of their normal plans, you can just go to Europe and text and use data like you normally would. Calls you can't use as you normally would. You are going to incur 25 cents a minute for international calls. And sometimes the data is in different generations. So when I was traveling this past summer, it was the first time I had seen this, that I would get an allotment every few days of 5G high-speed data. And once I used that all up, I still had unlimited data, but it was on the lower 2G speeds. It was still enough to get by, but every once in a while I'd have to wait for things to load. There are other paid add-ons available, but T-Mobile can be nice if you're a frequent traveler, just because I honestly don't even really think about it before I go. The only thing I think about is I have to not make super long international calls. Let's get to our Wi-Fi hoppers. So this was young Gabe, 24, trying to scrap it a little bit across Europe. I had Verizon. I didn't want to pay too much. So instead, I tried to just kind of hop from Wi-Fi to Wi-Fi network download maps when I was in Wi-Fi so that I could use them between places when I didn't have Wi-Fi access. So this is a way to kind of buy. I still recommend buying a pay for what you use international plan. I should say if you have T-Mobile, you shouldn't even have to worry about this option. But if you have a provider that has a more expensive international plan, I still recommend having a buy for what you use international plan just in case you need it. But then once you get to Europe, you can just turn your cellular data off. So you are not accessing those towers unless you really run stuck and need help. Then I will show you later how you can toggle it on to access those towers. Then, like I said, when you have Wi-Fi, you just try to download what you need onto your phone so that it lives on your phone instead of up in the cloud. And while you're going around, you have it downloaded there. So you can download maps and audio tours, which I'll also show you how to do soon. And you just want to find those Wi-Fi networks in cafes and libraries and transit stations and mooching off of friends' hotspots. A few other things to research if you really want to be stingy about this. Look into different data retrieval settings. So there are some ways that you can change how your phone, when and how your phone receives data. It's a little too niche to get into now, but you can look up the terms like push, fetch, sync, and manual. Technolocals, people that are going to get those local SIM cards to plug into their phones. First, ensure that your phone is unlocked. That doesn't mean like there's not a physical lock and key, but some providers lock your phone so that you could only use it on their network. You may need to go in and ask to have your phone unlocked, though most newer phones are. Once you get to Europe, you're going to go to the mobile phone shop. They say mobile more than cell phone, or mobile to rhyme with smile. And make sure you find the right card. So again, there are different sizes of SIM cards. So the person at the mobile phone shop can help you find the right one. Confirm that it has the capacity not just for text and voice, but also for data. And ask about the rates. So the rates are going to vary based on the country, based on the provider, but make sure that you're inquiring about those. You can typically expect to pay about $15 to $30 within one country for about a month. And then ask the clerk to set it all up, have them make a test call, have them enter a SIM PIN number, have them switch it to English if there are some notifications in a different language, have them show you how to check your balance, and make sure you write down your new phone number, because this will give your phone a new phone number, not permanently, just until you switch your old SIM card back in. And you can go about, if you run out of data, you can top it up as you need at mobile phone shops or even some convenience stores. But again, remember that your US number won't be reachable in the same way. A quick note on eSIMs. So again, I thought it meant electronic SIM. It is an embedded SIM card. So it lives deep inside your phone and can't be pulled out anymore. Apple has a list of eSIM carriers on their website that I found very helpful while I was researching this. You go to the website, you purchase basically a little license to use a certain network for a certain amount of data. Oftentimes you activate it by maybe downloading an app, or maybe they'll send you a QR code that you use. And then you add it to your phone. So I was actually surprised how easy it was on an iPhone. I just went to settings, cellular, and there it was, eSIM, to add an eSIM to my phone. On a Samsung Galaxy, you do settings, to connections, to SIM card manager, to add mobile plan. So quite honestly, eSIMs are very new. It's the iPhone 14 is the first one to only have eSIM capability. Older versions have eSIM capability. They just also still have a regular SIM card. So I've actually never used these myself because they're so new to the scene. Some advantages, you can load them up on your phone before you go. They're not losable, like a little SIM card. If you take it out when you go to France and then you go to put it back in at the end of your trip and you've misplaced it, you don't have to worry about that with this. And you can actually add multiple lines into your phone. Maybe you're going to travel to a few different countries and you can just add all those different SIMs to your phone before you even leave. The iPhone can hold up to 8. Disadvantages, it feels a little bit more tech savvy to me. And you can't easily switch it between phones like you could with a SIM card where you pull it out of one phone and put it into a new one. And the clean slater, somebody that wants to completely start over. This has kind of infinite possibilities. There are some people that will go to Europe, and when they go to the mobile phone shop, they won't just get the SIM card, but they'll say, hey, give me a whole new cheap phone, just kind of the cheapest little burner phone that you have that I can just use during my trip. Some people will buy a cheap unlocked smartphone online before they go, and they'll add in all the apps that they want and all the eSIMs that they need, and they'll take that with them. So there are a lot of other options, but I'm mostly going to focus on the options of using your phone. Now, we are going to move on to packing your phone. So Lisa helped you pack your bags last month. And I am going to help you pack your phone. So we are going to follow a packing process. First, clean out your phone. Unlike your luggage, which probably starts empty every time that you open it before a trip, we all know that some of our phones are cluttered and we might be running short on storage even before we go. We're going to pick out some travel apps. We're going to do some important downloading. We're going to save some important documents. And we're going to talk about some accompanying items that are not digital that you also need to take to support your phone. So first, clean out your phone, making room for travel memories. So you want to check your storage. One common culprit is photos. Go delete unneeded photos or maybe upload them to the cloud with an app like Google Photos, which I'll mention later. You can set auto delete for old conversations. So there is a feature that once a conversation in your phone is a year old, your phone just deletes it. Not great for sentimental pack rats like me, but for more practical people that maybe just forget about their texts, but know that they don't need them after a year. This is a good option to avoid clutter. Just take the opportunity to generally declutter your phone before you go. And there are options to purchase more storage, but I usually say do that as a last resort. Try tidying your things first. So I have a little video tutorial for those of you that have iPhones on how to check your storage. Afterwards, I have some screenshots of an Android device that will show you the same thing. So if you want to follow along with some of these brief little tutorials, take out your phone. Remember, though, that this will also be posted on YouTube and the Monday Night Travel web page later if you want to review it. Let's take a look at how to check the storage on our phone before leaving on our trip. We're going to begin at the settings icon in the bottom right-hand corner. And at the bottom of the screen, you will see an icon that says General. I'm going to click there. Then in the middle, you will see iPhone Storage. I'm going to select that. And I'm going to be shown all of my storage and how much I've used. So I've used almost 53 gigabytes out of 128, and I can see the distribution of how I've used it. So I have plenty of data tied up in messages, apps, and photos. And the great thing is that the iPhone and Androids give you some options for how to free up some storage. So I can delete old text conversations. I also like to review my large attachments. At the top here, I can see that I have a video of our dear Spanish guide Federico in his bright orange vest giving some instructions to a tour group. He sent this to me for a Monday Night Travel show, and it is lovely, but I don't think that I need it anymore. So I can free up that space and delete that video. So make sure that you free up plenty of space before going on your next trip so that you have space to store memories. All right, so I'm somebody that usually has my phone very full. So you can tell I have a fairly new phone that it's less than half full. My dear friend Casey helped me with some screenshots on an Android. So all of these Android screenshots start with swiping down from the top to get this main menu. You can see a lot of the Wi-Fi and cellular data options just live right there in those icons. But if you click the little gear in the upper right-hand corner, that gets you to more of the settings. To get to the storage, you're going to have to scroll down until you see battery and device care. You can see storage and memory also listed below battery and device care. And it gives us just that. It tells us how full our battery is, and it says how much storage is used. If you click on storage, it also breaks it down into different types. And if you scroll down, Androids also give you some strategies for decluttering storage, like getting rid of old messages and deleting large attachments. Next, once we declutter our phone, we are going to start to fill it up with our favorite travel apps. So here is Marta, who you might recognize from our Prague and Budapest destination duel, and she is going to give us her favorite travel app.
Hi, my name is Marta, and I work at the travel center here at Rick Steves, and I love Google Maps. I love the offline maps. So you can download an area, and then when you're actually out and about traveling, out wandering the city streets for the day, you can still use the app and use Google Maps, even if you don't have cell service. So doing that has saved me so many times from getting lost, and it's helped me get back home. Although sometimes I have to say it's kind of fun to get lost too.
All right, so thank you to Marta. Google Maps is also my #1. And Ben posted in the chat widget a list of, it was going to be my 10 favorite apps because it was a nice number, but there were 11 and I couldn't choose. But Google Maps is probably my favorite. It helps you navigate by foot, bike, car, or public transit. You can, if you're wondering, I mean, of course, you have the Rick Steves guidebook to guide you, but if you're in a place where you don't have a Rick Steves guidebook, you can just look around you and see what are the cafes and shops and restaurants near me. You can save favorite places on the map, and you can also download offline maps, which Marta mentioned and which I'll give you a tutorial on in just a couple minutes. Moving right along with Google Photos. So Google Photos lets you take pictures, they're saved onto your phone, and then Google Photos takes those photos off of your phone and saves them up in the cloud, which does not apply to your phone storage. So it's a great way to free up space on your phone. I also enjoy creating shared albums with friends. If they also have Google Photos, you can create a shared album, and throughout the trip, everybody can share their photos into that album so that the whole group has access to it. And it creates a nice photo library that I just think is very intuitive and has a great just user experience. Rolling right along with Google, we have Google Translate. So you might come along something like this. Geben Sie eine Text-zu-Text über, okay, I'm not going to try my German, but you can easily type that in to Google Translate and it will spit out the translation for you. And if you feel like that's a lot of typing, you can also, whether it is text on a screen or signs like this, Google Translate has a feature where you can use your camera, hold it over a sign, and I did this just earlier. It translates it over the text. This was one of the things that when I saw it, I felt like we're living in the future. So we can see that Sentiero d'Olivo is olive path. We can see that the sign that said tenere I cane al guinzaglio is keep dogs on a leash. And so you can see this in real time. There's also a feature where you can have a conversation with somebody. You can bring up Italian to English if I'm speaking with an Italian speaker, and the Italian speaker can say something in Italian, and the phone will spit it out in English to me. I can say something into the phone in English. It will spit it out in Italian. As a former Spanish teacher, part of me groans at this, that it makes language so easy in a way that I do think that people should invest time in learning languages still, but we can't learn all the languages. And this is a great way to set this down on the table of a little cafe with a native speaker if they are welcoming you there, and you can have an entire conversation. It might take a little bit longer, but it will translate really well. WhatsApp, like I said, this is ubiquitous among Europeans. You can use it for text, voice, call, and video, and it does it over Wi-Fi, which allows you to skirt around international calling rates and to make sure that you aren't using up that precious cellular data allotment. There are plenty of other applications that allow you to do messaging and calls over Wi-Fi, like FaceTime, Google Meet, Skype, Facebook Messenger. WhatsApp is just the most ubiquitous in Europe. CBP MPC, one of my favorites, not so interesting, but you will be so glad you downloaded it. It is the US Customs and Border Protection Mobile Passport Control. This allows you to enter your information for customs before you even land. You just let them know kind of your general identity entry information, when you're arriving, where you're arriving from. And the last time I arrived into Seattle, I didn't have global entry, but I had this app and there was a separate line for it. Granted, it wasn't a hugely busy day, but most people, it looks like, were waiting maybe 5 to 10 minutes. I literally walked through, had no line. It took me about 10 seconds. So I can't guarantee that will be the case every time, but they often have a separate line for people that are using this app. The Rick Steves Audio Europe app, 60 audio walking tours. I just had a colleague that was on a trip in Europe and came back raving about this. It was funny, she was actually speaking with one of the main people that works on the tours, but didn't really realize it. And so the person was very pleased to hear how much she enjoyed them. They really are exceptional. There are also dozens of expert interviews that you can listen to while you're in transit or maybe before you go. You can download the audio tours in advance, which I will show you how to do in a moment. And the app and the audio files are free. DB Navigator. This is for Deutsche Bahn, the German national rail provider. You can book train tickets that would be sold through Deutsche Bahn, but they also allow you to search a lot of rail schedules throughout Europe. So it can be very helpful if you're traveling by rail. TripIt is an itinerary planning app where you upload your confirmations to the app when you receive your hotel and flight confirmations, and it creates a comprehensive itinerary so that you can see your whole trip all in one piece, and you can access it from all your various devices. So if you are somebody that needs to get a bit more itinerary organized, this is a great one for you. XE allows you to track exchange rates, so you can see how the exchange rates are fluctuating. You can set alerts for if you want to maybe exchange currency once it hits a certain point. And you can calculate your conversions. It has a great conversion calculator. If you don't want to try to do 7.2 Danish kroner is $1 US, which I always stubbornly try to do in my head, this would be much faster. Your wallet, so this is the Apple Wallet, but there's also Google Wallet for Android. It allows you to use Apple Pay or other wireless payment methods to store your credit cards. I always file my plane tickets here so that they're nice and easy to find when I'm at the airport. And you can also store insurance policies in there to refer to. Find My. This is a very helpful one in a pinch. You can keep an eye on your friends if your friends share their location with you. So if you're traveling with a group and you decide to separate, you can always see where the others are so long as they are connected to the internet. You can track down lost devices if you lose one, and even items that have air tags on them. You can link to this so you can find them. It's a great way to find valuables if you have the unfortunate experience of getting separated from them while traveling. You can see here that it's not enough to just add all these apps, but I like to try to organize all my travel apps on the first page of apps on my phone. So this is my phone. It's a beautiful thing. All 11 of those apps, along with some basic other helpful features like the clock and the weather, which are also helpful while traveling, are all right there within the reach of one quick thumb swipe. So the next thing that we do is some of these apps I think of more as like packing cubes. And so we need to not just put them in our phone, but we need to put things within them. So we need to do some of our downloads. So again, saving cards and tickets to the wallet app is very helpful, but you also want to download your offline maps and any audio tours. And I'm going to give you a quick tutorial on how to do both now.
Now we're going to take a look at how to download offline maps on the Google Maps app. So first I will navigate to the Google Maps app, which is on the left side of my screen. And we will see that I am here in Edmonds, Washington at Rick Steves Europe HQ, but I don't want to download a map for Edmonds. I want to download one for Switzerland. So we go across the ocean blue, and here we are. I would like to download a map for Bern, Switzerland. So we're here in Bern. Now in the upper right-hand corner, you will see a G for Gabe. I'm going to click that to see some additional settings and options. And I see about halfway down offline maps. You see the little X through the cloud to show that we are not going to be connected to the internet when we use these. I select offline maps and I click select your own map. You can see at the bottom, I can scroll to make my area larger or smaller, and you can see that the numbers at the bottom are going to change to show how much space it's going to take up on my phone. Doing this entire area that also includes Interlaken and Basel will be 205 megabytes of data, but I really just want the city limits of Bern. So we're going to go right there, and that's just 25 megabytes. And I'm simply going to click download, and download now. So now the phone is going to take its time to download all the niggling alleys and lanes and streets of the great city of Bern, and it does all of that in just about 5 seconds. We can see that it's already renamed it. I'm going to rename it to just Bern because I'm sure this is the larger area, but I'm just going to be using it within Bern. Now, I have this entire area, and whenever I am traveling there, even if I'm not connected to the internet, I can still look around the map and I can still find my driving and walking directions within the city.
All right, so these are extremely helpful. I always download the offline maps. It's great if you're in a pinch and get turned around, or even if you just want to, take a look around at what's around you. It is still incredible to me that this is possible. And here's a quick tutorial on if you want to download some audio files for a little audio tour on your next trip.
All right, let's take a look at how to download audio files from the Rick Steves Audio Europe app. First, we'll navigate to the app here on the right-hand side of my screen, and we'll be greeted by Rick and the David smiling in Academia Gallery. We are going to go to find tours and interviews, and here we're going to find 60 different walking tours across major neighborhoods and sites throughout Europe. They're all categorized here by their region, and we're also going to find dozens and dozens of interviews between Rick and experts in these areas. Everybody's talking about Paris these days with the Olympics coming up, so let's find a walking tour there. We can see the walking tours with the walking person icons, and down below we have the audio tours with the microphone icons. I think the classic historic Paris walk sounds great. We'll see the details up here. We see that it is 72 minutes. It'll take up 70 megabytes on our phones, and it was lovingly updated in March 2023, so it is very recent. And I'm going to click download and wait those few moments for that great information to find its way to my phone. We can start listening to that now, even if we are not connected to Wi-Fi and cellular data, because it is now stored on our phone. Back on the main menu, we can click My Playlist. We can see that I've already been listening to the Louvre audio tour, and here we have historic Paris. We have a few options down in the bottom left. We can click this icon to see an outline of the walking tour and all the places that it will go. In the middle, we have a map icon so that we can get our bearings. And in the bottom right, we have one more with updates, tips, and a full script of the walking tour. But I'm ready to get listening, so let's take a listen to Rick now.
Historic Paris Walk. Paris has been continuously inhabited for over 2,000 years. The city of today is a lively cocktail of both old and new, a place that both thrills and inspires.
All right, and then once we are done listening, we can go back to our playlist. We can click Edit, and when we're ready to free up some space on our phone, we can just click Delete. So that is the Rick Steves Audio Europe app. I hope that you enjoy your walking tours the next time you are in Europe.
All right, it's truly incredible to me. I'm more of a use the book walking tour person personally. So I say this as somebody that doesn't even use this app super frequently, that it's incredible to me how often online I see people posting and raving about these audio tours. So they really are an amazing resource, and I hope you give them a try. All right, so in addition to downloading those files, I think it's also great to take some time to save some important documents. So I usually take screenshots of any flight reference numbers, any hotel confirmation, any museum tickets, restaurant reservations, even things like prescription labels. I just take pictures or screenshots of everything that I think is at least a little bit important, and I save them all in one photo album in the photo apps on my phone. I was just hearing from one of my favorite Monday Night Travel viewers, Dennis, who does the same thing, who reached out to me when he heard that we were doing a show on traveling with a mobile device, that he does the same thing. He also takes pictures of receipts and puts all of those in a separate album for review after his trip. So that can be a very helpful way to kind of quickly digitize your files and keep them in one place. Also, it's great to add any important contacts, hotels and things of that sort to WhatsApp. And of course, not everything is digital just yet. So make sure that you have your accompanying things like your charger, an adapter. This is a Great Britain adapter, not a continental Europe adapter. I always encourage people, bring at least one extra adapter. It's so easy to have muscle memory take over and you just pull your charger out thinking that you're just pulling it out from the wall like you do at home and forgetting that there's an adapter involved and leaving it in the wall at your hotel. So always pack at least one extra. I usually bring 2 extras. There are also various power banks or kind of backup batteries. So here's a nice small one. Basically, I can charge this up. And if I'm in a situation where maybe I'm hiking in the Alps or I'm using a lot of really intensive, using my phone more intensively for some reason that day, if it runs low on charge, I have this little extra backup that I can connect to my phone and I can charge my phone while I'm out on the road, and it doesn't take up much space. Pack earbuds if you do want to do something like a walking tour. I keep mine zipped up in this nice little container. And you want to make sure that you have a secure carrier for your phone. So it's not necessarily going to fit super well in a money belt if you already have everything else in your money belt. You could fit it, but it's about as important as things like your passport and large sums of money, because if you're saving a lot of valuable documents on there, it could really derail your trip if you lost it. So my policy is I always have a bag that I wear on the front of my person that has a zippered pocket, and I always leave my phone in there. So always make sure that you're, whether it's a money belt or kind of fanny pack like this, a crossbody bag, that you're keeping your phone zippered and on the front of your person. Lastly, I know I said that I like to take photos and keep them in an album of all my documents. I also still really like to have physical documents in case my phone gets stolen, in case I accidentally delete the album. So I always make sure that I have a physical copy and a digital copy of any really valuable documents and confirmations. All right, lastly, on the ground in Europe. I know you might say, we're just getting to Europe. We're an hour in. But fortunately, if we set everything up correctly, the getting to Europe should just be a final few nuts and bolts and best practices while we're on the ground. So this is our last section. So right off the plane, depending on the strategy that you took earlier, you're going to have different actions that you take. If you have a global internet or an international pass through your regular mobile provider, just turn off airplane mode and go. You figured it out before you went. Yes, use Wi-Fi when you can, but don't worry about using data. If you are a Wi-Fi hopper, though, you want to make sure that that cellular data is turned off and you want to start hunting for Wi-Fi. Fortunately, the airport almost certainly has free Wi-Fi, so you can look up directions for how to get to your next place. If you are going to be a techno-local, pick up a SIM card or activate your eSIM. Sometimes they even have SIM cards that you can get in the airport. And if you are a clean slater, make sure that you either go to a mobile phone shop ASAP to buy that new phone, or if you brought a new phone with you, just activate it upon landing. All right, I am going to quickly show you how to turn your data on and off. So even if, like I said, even if you do have a data plan, it's still helpful to know how to turn your data on and off if you would like to, though this is best for the people that are trying to just get by on Wi-Fi.
Let's take a quick look at how to turn our cellular data and data roaming on and off. We're going to begin at the settings icon at the bottom right-hand corner of my screen. And very near the top, we're going to see a green icon that says cellular. We are going to click there and we can see our cellular data and our cellular data options. I can turn off all of my data by clicking this toggle, and we see the 5G in the upper right-hand corner disappear, and there it's back because I turned my data back on. And the option below that is the roaming. So I can click into there and I can turn my data roaming off. That will ensure that I am not charged while I am wandering off in Europe beyond my normal mobile network. Now, you can just turn off your data roaming and not turn off your cellular data. But if I'm going to be traveling in Europe, I'm not going to be anywhere near my home network. So really the only kind of cellular data that I'm going to be using is roaming data. So I oftentimes, if I don't want my data to be on, will just click this cellular data toggle. So that is a great way if you don't have an international plan or if you're trying to use it sparingly to control your data consumption.
All right, so again, if you have a great international plan, you don't have to worry about that too much. But if you're trying to get by on Wi-Fi, maybe you have a SIM for a certain country and you're going to be passing near another one and you want to make sure that you're not pinging to a tower in a different network, you can use that feature. On an Android, again, you swipe down from the top to get this main menu, click the little gear for your settings, and kind of all of this Wi-Fi cellular stuff is under connections. And you would just then go to your mobile networks, and you have a setting for data roaming right there. Now some tips for throughout your trip. So a reminder, Wi-Fi is king. Even if you have cellular data, maybe you have a limited amount of it. And so using Wi-Fi is always preferable, and assuming you're nearish to the router, it's probably going to be faster. You can find it in cafes, many public places. Just make sure that you're not doing like personal banking and things on non-password protected networks, and avoid international rates by using WhatsApp. Using a hotspot, we talked about that before, transforming your phone into an internet source. You can tether other devices, your laptop, your friends' phones, if they don't have a good cellular network that they can draw from. But just be careful because it can drain your data and battery pretty quickly. Dialing internationally. It's a bit trickier on a landline, but it's pretty easy on cell phones. Again, first try to use WhatsApp first to make these calls via Wi-Fi if you're in near a Wi-Fi hotspot. But otherwise, just press the plus button and dial the number. Usually you'll see a 0 before the number. Drop that 0 unless it is for Italy, because the Italians just like to be difficult. There are different instructions for landlines, and there's a helpful website called howtocallabroad.com where you can specifically put in, I am trying to call from here to here, and it will give you step-by-step instructions. All right, we have another quick tip from Andy.
Hi all, I'm Andy Steves and I enjoy leading the Best of Europe in 21 days. Now, on day 1, I teach my tour members how to make sure that their phone lasts on battery throughout these exciting long days on the road. First off, I make sure that they know how to close out of the apps that they're not using by swiping up on an iPhone. And as soon as you get up in the morning, first thing, switch into low battery mode. On an iPhone, that means swiping down from the top and clicking that battery icon. That way, you can ensure that your phone will likely last through dinner. So I hope that keeps your phone alive and kicking. Happy travels.
So a thank you to Andy for that. So as a quick review, ways to conserve battery. Sometimes you're going to be on the move. You can't stop and charge your phone. Switch to low power mode. You can also reduce the brightness. Less light is going to take less energy. Sometimes we have all these apps running in the background. I'm horrified about once a week I go through and realize that I have 20 open, and some of them are just quietly sucking energy. You can carry, again, a little power bank and carry your charger, but you can also just try to use your phone less and it will last longer. Keeping your text secure. So again, keep your phone in a hidden zippered pocket. Invasion of the phone snatchers. There are, fortunately, you don't have to worry about a lot of like violent theft and robbery on the streets of Europe, but there are incidences of people walking around London, looking at their directions, walking right next to the street, and somebody comes by on a little moped and plucks it right out of your hand. So just make sure, I always try to think about having 2 hands on my phone when I'm walking along the street, using it for directions, and maybe not walking right next to the street. Again, public Wi-Fi networks they're fine to use. Just be careful with if doing anything with sensitive information while you're using them. And something that's a little tangential to technology, but there's a lot of ways to use technology to meet people while you're traveling. Sometimes meeting people online. When you're meeting up with those people that you've only communicated with online, be careful to meet with them in public places and be very careful. I had a friend that met up with somebody that they met online and ended up getting their phone and laptop stolen from them when they met up with that person. So just be careful with that as well. A couple last tips to close us out here, and one of them comes from Stacy.
Hi, I'm Stacy from the Rick Steves Europe Travel Center. I'm an avid photographer and I have a couple of tips on how to take the best images while you're out on tour. Number 1, clean your lens. It can be as simple as using your sleeve right there, the bottom of your shirt, or anything that you have just to wipe that down. It'll take the best images. Number 2, did you know that you can use your volume buttons to take a selfie? Happy travels.
That one rocked my world when I learned that I could use the volume buttons instead of trying to crane my thumb. So that one I use all the time, and I frequently realize that my lens is smudged. So thank you, Stacy. And again, a reminder, use Google Photos to create shared albums. That's one of my other favorite things to do with travel photos, so that I can just review them every night and see what my friends have added from our adventures. And my last thing is stay present. Like we said, use your phone as a tool, not as entertainment or a distraction. There are plenty of uses for your phone for information and for entertainment that are great back home. But when you're in a new culture and a new place trying to be present, let your phone connect you and not separate you. Avoid using it as entertainment. Go see a fado show or a flamenco show, or go have a drink at a Irish pub instead of dinking around on your phone at night. One thing that my parents have done when they've traveled is they'll allow themselves a Wi-Fi hour. Sometimes it's around happy hour. They'll go back to their hotel for a little rest, and they will allow themselves 1 hour to, sip an Aperol and send updates to their children, which we appreciate, or to maybe quickly play a little word game to decompress. But try to put confines on that phone time. Try going for a phone-free adventure. Just like Marta said, it can be fun to get lost so long as you know how to know a way to find your way back or how to ask for help. And another option is take your phone with you, but power it down and put it away so that if you really need it, you can grab it out of your backpack and spend 60 seconds powering it up. But having to do that will keep you from using it every 5 seconds to take a photo that you're just going to delete later. And once you put your phone away enough to stay present, it allows you to just really connect with the natural beauty that's around you. I was looking back at a trip from Switzerland and just thinking about the sounds of being out and about in Lausanne, appreciating the views and the smells of the alpine air in the Lauterbrunnen Valley, and just hearing the trickling of the Aar River through Bern and the sounds of the bell echoing through the city. Those are the things that you can really appreciate when you just put your phone away and you are present. And a reminder that you can learn about the cities of Switzerland next week with Emily and Miriam. All right, so Ben, that is the end of my presentation on phones and technology. I know that some of it went quickly. I know that it probably spurred a lot of questions, but hopefully it inspires you to some research and some experimentation and prods you to just think about how you use your phone while you're traveling, using it to connect rather than to disconnect.
Well done, Gabe. I enjoyed your slick screen recordings in particular. Well done.
Thank you. As you know, I was scrambling to finish them up until the last minute, but I'm glad that I got them at it.
Well, it was worth your time. I think they were very informative. Okay, shall we get to some questions?
Yes, as I said at the beginning, I am not a tech expert, but I have done as much research as I can, and I'm ready to take on the questions.
All right, Gabe. Do you use, or have you ever used, a VPN when traveling?
I have not used a VPN while traveling. My understanding of a VPN is basically like tricking a device into thinking that it's in a different place. I have not used that. So
I have a couple of times.
You have, Ben? Oh,
yes,
please
well,
enlighten us. Ben is, by all means, just as tech savvy as I am.
Well, in Russia, when I was there for a year, VPN was very helpful because the Russian government restricts certain websites, and I couldn't access my bank even when I was in Russia. So I needed a VPN to even do basic functional things. You're right. I think it just encrypts what you're doing onto a different server in a different country, a place of your choosing, and it can provide some additional protection. But none of us normally use it when traveling, as you mentioned, Gabe. So it's certainly not a requirement. I think maybe business travelers, people working with sensitive information, people traveling to non-Western European countries may be more likely to benefit from it.
Well, thank you very much, Ben. I've always thought of it as something that seems kind of sneaky and maybe illicit, but I'm sure that there are plenty of great ways to do it, like staying on top of your bank account while you're being studious in Russia.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, Susan would like to know, Gabe, can you rent a smartphone when going to Europe?
So I would just check in with the local mobile phone shop. I think usually the times that I actually bought a phone and used it, kind of a little burner phone, was when I was studying for months. And then I usually just took the phone home with me. And I don't know, it just sat there. So I would just, if that's something that you're interested in, I know that it's going to vary from country to country, but like Vodafone and Labara are common options. So I would just search for their offerings, and when you get to your hotel, ask where the closest mobile phone shop is and see if you can then bring the phone back when you're done.
Ah, that's a great tip. Becky would like to know, Gabe, if you've ever experienced this issue where banks text your American number, a code, in order to access or approve a purchase or access banking information, like verified by Visa. Have you ever come across that?
So I have, it's interesting because I am used to fastidiously updating my banks of where I'm going. I always log into I have a couple accounts and I always try to say I'm going to these countries, don't freeze. I had one time that my credit card was frozen back when I was a student. And recently, I've been told by both of my banks that I work with that they don't require that. And so, yeah, I've stopped updating my banks and I've never had to receive a code to verify a purchase.
Yeah, I have on a couple occasions, and it was a problem actually. Yeah, it was a problem because I had my Finnish SIM card in the phone, and I was getting a text that I needed to pay for something to my American number, which is what the bank had on file. So I had to take the Finnish SIM card in, put the American SIM card in, and then be charged $10 by Verizon to access the code to make the purchase. So this is actually, I don't know how often it happens. You've never experienced it, so it may not always happen. It may depend on your type of card. It is maybe one benefit of having the international plan with your American provider so that you always keep the same number, right? That could be a small benefit.
Yeah, and I do think unless you're really in a situation that you have to be really stingy, I would just, and it's easy for me again, because I have T-Mobile, which has a great international plan, but I just think the convenience is worth to spend a little bit more just to not have to worry about it. I just think that the SIM cards seem like a lot of hassle, but certainly the eSIM technology is intriguing. And I should say, though, I would still check and see if your bank has a policy that they like to know if you're traveling. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying I always do. And the last couple times, my banks have told me I don't need to. But I don't think that that's necessarily universal.
Yeah, I've experienced that too, like with the Alaska card, right? They don't typically have you check in with Bank of America anymore. Yeah. Thanks, Gabe. We have an interesting question from George. He says, the smartphone has brought so many conveniences and so many distractions, as you pointed out earlier. Would you prefer to be a traveler before the existence of the smartphone or today?
I think I want to say that Rick was actually asked something really similar a few weeks ago. I think my answer would be that I would like to travel once without it to experience it. As somebody who is kind of a digital native, has always had a phone while traveling abroad, I would like to experience what it's like without it and just being fully present and having to navigate and negotiate some of those now antiquated systems, and just not always be in contact. But I think ultimately the goal is to have the convenience of it without the distraction. And I think I'm genuinely going to try to, on more of my trips, turn my phone off and put it in my bag so that I'll only access it when I really, really want to, not just because, oh, this would be a fun picture. I think arguably I take too many pictures rather than being present. And there are places like last week or a couple weeks ago on the presentation in Fiji, I know that Lisa and Minal talked about a resort in Fiji where you have to kind of turn your phone in before you go and you're forced to be phone free. So maybe you can find some little retreats that do that for you.
Yeah, very true. Very true. And it's just the phone is going to become even more ubiquitous, isn't it? Right? Transportation apps like we show your ticket are becoming increasingly common. The swipe cards like the Orca we have, right? Or London's are going away. So it's a trend for sure.
It's going to be always evolving. I'm sure this presentation will be outdated in a short amount of time, but I hope that it was helpful to people for today.
I think it was very helpful, Gabe. You reminded me of things, and you told me things that I didn't even know as well. So I think you did a really nice job. We just have one more question
Okay.
from Sheila. She's curious if where you're traveling, and I don't know if it's Europe or beyond Europe, you can answer that either way, um, helps determine what phone option you go with, whether just Wi-Fi, SIM card, American phone provider, or your current phone provider.
So most of those major providers, when I was looking up their international plans, it says available in 210 plus countries. So I'm sure that there are places like I didn't look up the list. I'm assuming maybe North Korea is one of the few that doesn't make the list. But I'm sure that are some places where they don't have the same coverage, but most of that coverage for those international plans is going to be fairly consistent. Certainly, you might have some places that don't have as good of cellular coverage just because of infrastructure. I was looking up different eSIM rates. Again, it's a new thing. I was just playing around looking at some different rates, and it looked like the eSIMs in Switzerland were kind of more comparable to like just a regular, what the Verizon or AT&T plan would cost. Whereas I looked at one in Spain and it looked like it was very much cheaper. So those rates for SIMs and eSIMs are going to vary based on provider and based on country. So that could make a difference. Oftentimes Switzerland's more expensive than Spain is, but you might see a result of that in the price of SIM cards, whereas your international plan through your mobile provider back at home is going to be just kind of the same rate regardless of where you go. So it is worth looking into the cost of the SIM or the eSIM.
That makes sense. Yeah. Well, that was the final question, Gabe. This was fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to share all of these tech phone tips with us. You did a wonderful job.
Excellent. Well, thank you to all of you. Thank you, Ben. And yeah, remember that next week we are going to Switzerland with Emily and Miriam. Miriam is a guide I've loved for a long time and had a Aperol spritz with her on St. Mark's Square in Venice once, chatting with her. So I'm excited for you all to meet her next week to discuss great Swiss cities. Then, as Ben said, we're taking a little 3-week break, and we are coming back with a hard-hitting show to celebrate the 80th anniversary of D-Day with Steve Smith and local Normandy guide Dale Booth. I'm so excited for that. So thank you all once more. Have a great night.